No separation exists between us and books. Simulating oneness, this program analyzes, reviews, and breaks down books across all genres through a conscious lens. Synergizing literary theory, philosophy, psychology, spirituality, and the occult, Conscious Book Reviews co-creates a new literary consciousness transcending objective interpretations. Hello everyone, it's Ian Cattanach from Conscious Writers Tribe, and today I'm here to do a conscious book review on We, Understanding the Psychology of Romantic Love by Robert A. Johnson. In a nutshell, We is a Jungian interpretation of romantic love through the myth of Iseult and Tristan, and that myth is an ancient myth. Before we get into the content of this book, first let's ask, what is romantic love? What is your definition of romantic love? And Robert A. Johnson, in the introduction on page 11 of the introduction, says, romantic love is not just a form of love. It is a whole psychological package, a combination of beliefs, ideals, attitudes, and expectations. So in this review, I'm going to bring in psychoanalytical thought, spiritual thought, and philosophical ideas to help explicate on some of the things that Robert A. Johnson is talking about, even though he brings all those things into this book to analyze it. What is Jung other than psychological, philosophical, and spiritual? But ask yourself, now that we've heard from Robert A. Johnson, which is the axiomatic definition that this book builds upon, what is your definition of romantic love? How does that differ from normal love? Is there while you're in a relationship with your significant other, is it all just romantic love, or is that just a facet of a larger, or is that just a stem of the larger conception of love, of a larger conception of love? And once you figure that out, ask yourself, where did you learn this conception of love? Where did your ideas and philosophy of love stem from? Most of us, including myself, probably got programmed through Disney, TV shows, movies, books, what our parents thought, the general attitude of our friends. But have we listened in silence to our true definition of what romantic love is? Have we explored that? And a lot of our shame and guilt that causes inner repression and neurosis in society right now, I feel has a part of it has something to do with love and our conception of love and our triumphs and failures in love. The divorce rate is over 50% right now. And most people are just following the programming that I just mentioned. And a lot of that programming puts romantic love at the very top. And okay, let's move forward a little bit. Because what is romantic love? So let's get into romantic love anymore and the general attitude that people bring to a romantic relationship or to romantic love. Jung would say, and I would generally agree, that we enter relationships seeking the God image or seeking the image of the soul, that we feel unfulfilled in our life, that we don't love ourselves, and we don't have a sense of wholeness within us, and that we're seeking to become whole through someone else. In a relationship, one of my past relationships, my ex-partner said, she would always say that this makes me feel whole and all this stuff, and I always thought that was a red flag, but I didn't have like the soul image reference of years ago when this was happening. So let's break that down a little bit. We don't feel whole, so we have a void within us for whatever reason. All of us have one, and instead of trying to fill that void ourselves, then entering a romantic relationship, we put those expectations and beliefs onto a partner. instead of seeing a partner for who they actually are in objective reality, having an accurate perception of the reality of who your partner is, we put these expectations on them because of this soul image. We have an internal ideal of an eternal feminine or masculine or eternal partner, right? Right? And this leads to issues because, of course, that person's going to fail. They're not going to live up to your, prince or princess programming. And people who have a void within them also avoid confrontation. They don't like to say that they were wrong. So what do? They project on the other person and say, this is all your fault. You need to change how I feel. This is, I'm sure a lot of you, if you've been in a relationship, have experienced this. This is all your fault. And there's blaming and shaming. And the other person's probably filling a void with you too. And then there's fighting. And then there's the breakup, most likely. Or just living in, or just living in a terrible relationship. And this moves back to John Baudrillard. Let's reverse course a little bit. John Baudrillard, the French theorist, you could call him. He doesn't like to be called a postmodernist or a literary theorist. So the French theorist had the idea of the simulacra, and his great book Simulacra and the Simulation gets into this more. But a simulacra is a copy of a copy. So right now, let's think about Disney, right? Disney is, when you're watching Aladdin on the movie Aladdin, you're seeing a copy of a copy. Really what it is was that, a bunch of animators came together, and that was the initial experience while they were animating that and putting sound to it. But we're getting a copy of that now. Or when you're seeing the news or something happen on the news, you're getting a copy of what the actual experience in objective reality. But in our society now, and before in society, the simulacra barely existed. It existed in the form of stories and art, a little bit of art. Art is artifice, right? And so there wasn't that much, and that was probably a lot better that we got these occasional doses. But now we don't just have an excess of simulacra. We have copies of copies of copies of copies of copies times 100. So an example of this would be princess programming or, prince programming in these movies. So you see a Disney movie and so let's say I watched a Disney movie or an adult movie, like a modern movie you would see in theaters about love. And if that's a simulacra of a relationship, that's actually, it's a fake relationship that they're acting. But then if I start to conceptualize my relationship and my life, and I start using that information that was already fake to inform my own opinion and perception of my current relationships or future relationships, then that's a simulacra of a simulacra of a simulacra, right? And because and at the start, and what makes it worse is that the start was never real, right? When you look at art or some forms of simulacra, there actually is a thing that you can find. There actually is a base. There actually is a base in reality. But now we're getting to this point where we're 10, 12 steps down the road, and we can't even figure out where this started. And the start wasn't even real in the first place. And that is, and this isn't saying that is wrong. That it isn't, art isn't wrong. Art is a beautiful experience, and we all need to become an artist in our own ways to help. But we need to be aware of this phenomena. We need to be aware of what is happening with this concept of the simulacra. And what I would propose is that the simulacras are informing a lot of our basis of romantic love, and that's why we are experiencing a lot of failure in the arena of romantic love. And I have a quote here from a academic journal essay called Social Class and Postmodernity, Simulacrum or Return of the Real by Dean and Juliet McCannell. And they're talking about Disney and the simulacra, and they say, Mickey is a model of the real without origin or reality. This representational imaginary is nuclear and genetic and no longer specular and discursive. With it goes all of metaphysics, no more mere of being and appearances, of the real and its concepts, no more imaginary coextensivity, rather genetic miniaturization of the dimension of the simulation. And I'll just let you guys chew on that. That was, if you're just listening, I typed all that out and then it appears in this presentation on the screen. Whoa, right? And if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you can just look it up, go to the website, go to the link on consciouswriterstribe.com and find this, and that will be on the blog page or the YouTube page. All the quotes, I should have said that at the start, all the quotes will be located on the screen or on the page. So this starts, and that I went down the Baudrillard route because that informs us that romantic love is always a projection of the soul image. And there is a difference between romantic love and normal love. Normal love is seeing someone for who they, not normal love, but real love. Real love is seeing someone for who they are in reality and loving them unconditionally and not trying to change them for your own inner expectations or ideals. You just love them for who they are. You see them and you're like, wow. Like, of course, there's some idiosyncrasies. There's some issues that, I don't like that her feet smell or his feet smell. There's always going to be things. Nothing is ever perfect. But just on a whole basis, you aren't trying to make these massive strokes, to change them. And I am single right now, and I feel that the reason I am single is that because I was performing a projection of that sort, or I was being projected on as, in that way. And before I enter my next real relationship, I am going to make sure that I'm not projecting in that way, and that I inform my partner about these concepts and tell them, like, please don't do that to me, because I'm going to let you down. This is what starts to happen in the myth, as we're going to get into that in a second. But just a little more creative theory right now is that this also just extends outside of the soul image concept, extends outside of romantic love. Do we not do this on our gurus, our parents, our teachers? Do we not have a void and try to have them fill it for us? Guru means from darkness to light, that this person is going to bring you out of darkness. But anyone who is on a spiritual path or a spiritual seeker of truth understands that only you can do that. Someone can give you all the keys in the world, but you have to walk through the door. You have to put the key in the door and walk through. We all have friends or family who we've tried to help in some way. And we had all the information for them. They're so close to a change in health or consciousness, and they just don't do it. They just, and it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. And it's a part of this, though, that you can't really do it for them. You have to have the will to power, right? So let's hop into some of the texts here. And let me I guess I should give a summary for maybe those who haven't read this yet, or just as a reminder for those who have, of the myth of Iseult and Tristan. So, long story short, Tristan befriends King Mark, and he's very loyal to him, and they become close friends and partners. And King Mark and at one point Tristan leaves to go and find a bride for King Mark, because King Mark has not wedded yet. He is a single man. And a kind of a prophetic hair comes through a bird, and Tristan goes to find whose golden hair this is. And it turns out that it's Iseult's. And to get her to come with them, to have her father give his daughter up, whatever you want, even though that sounds bad. I mean, that's what was happened. He has to go slay a dragon, the dragon saga. So he slays the dragon, and then the father releases Iseult, and he's bringing Iseult back to King Mark so that they can marry. However, a sorceress sneaks a love potion into a wine that Tristan and Iseult drink. And they fall madly in love with each other after they drink it. And of course, this creates problems. They're already having sex and, doing the dirty deeds. And then, she gets back to King Mark and she's supposed to marry him. And she does marry him. But there's this issue because they keep meeting up in secret. And there's all these, and eventually King Mark figures out. They run away together. Iseult and Tristan run away to the forest and live in poverty for years. And then eventually Tristan's like, no, you have to go back to him. So Iseult goes back to King Mark, and then the kingdom flourishes. And that's one of the things we'll talk about, how the kingdom flourishes when they're together, but when she's not there, there's famine. And Tristan, all heartbroken, goes on this world saga, traveling the world, being in wars, and he ends up in another kingdom, and he befriends the king there and helps him win some battles. And the king's like, you gotta, I'm gonna let you take my sister's hand in marriage. So they marry, but Tristan, because he's so enamored still with Iseult, he doesn't have sex with his new wife. And this creates problems. And eventually the wife tells the king, and the king's like, what the heck's happening? And he says, I drank this love potion. I need to know what is happening with Iseult. So he goes back, and him and the king go to Iseult's kingdom and King Mark's kingdom, and they confront her as beggars, and they reveal who they are. And she says, no, get out of here. And so he goes back, but he's still not happy. In the back of his mind, he's like, I want one more answer. I need to know one more time. And of course, Iseult was really just fronting. And then she's like, no, I really love him. So as she's coming back, she's supposed to come back and supposed to display. The king's supposed to go and ask her, and she's supposed to come back. And if she's on the ship, and Tristan's really sick now, I should mention that. Tristan gets really sick, and he's waiting for this boat with her or her not on it. And as it's supposed to come into port, either it's supposed to have a black sail if she's not there, or a white sail if she is there. And as it's coming into port, his new wife, the jealous wife, who's super angry, says, oh, it's a black sail. But there's really a white sail on it. So then Tristan commits, Romeo and Juliet suicide. Then Iseult comes and commits suicide also. And it's, a prototype of Romeo and Juliet. That's a really rough version in a nutshell. I missed some stuff along the way. I'm sorry. I've tried to do the best I could from memory. So that's just the basis of the story. So as we explore this topic, if you didn't already know it or just needed a review, we can get into that. So let's move into this quote. Let's get back to a deeper definition of romantic love from Robert A. Johnson. Quote, page 45. Here, then, is the starting point for our exploration. Romantic love is not love, but a complex attitudes about love, involuntary feelings, ideals, and reactions. Like Tristan, we drink of the potion and find ourselves possessed, caught in automatic reactions and intense feelings, a near visionary state. And that happens, and I see this all the time in spiritual people, or just woke, intelligent people in general, that at the start of this relationship, they're just, oh my God, they're just possessed and overtaken by this relationship. And what starts to happen is they become removed from the values of reality. They start running away from real life. I've been in relationships before where I'm just so intent on that relationship, and then even trying to live up to their soul ideal for me, that I forget about all the stuff I'm doing. I can't tell you how many books I should have read, stories I should have written, novels I should have already published, because I've been off on a vision train in a relationship, trying to live up to this soul image, or trying to, or just projecting on someone else. It has gone both ways with me. And if you haven't experienced this, I'm sure you've had friends or family, and they get this new relationship partner, and they're totally different. their political views change, or they're not pursuing their dreams anymore. If they want to be an artist, they're like, no, I'm just going to be an accountant. And the fire, the edge, everything starts to leave their bodies, and it's one of the craziest things ever to witness in real life. And if it happens to you, you don't even see while it's happening, or you don't see it while it's happening because you're the one that's brainwashed. And this is an allegory to what happens in our myth, because Tristan is loyal to King Mark. His values are for the kingdom and to serve King Mark. He is a very loyal man to King Mark and the values of the kingdom. But what does he do? He runs away from one of the best jobs in the kingdom and the best version that the kingdom could be. He's just saying, no, I don't care about the kingdom in general because of this love, because of my love. I will cause a break in issues with the kingdom. And then on Iseult's side, she is the lost feminine. King Mark is ruling in this very masculine way, and she's the healer of the nation. And she does that. She ends famines, and everyone loves her, and the kingdom prospers when she's around. But every time that she leaves, the kingdom falls into famine. So she's betraying her values because Iseult's a pretty nice. She's has a good heart in general, and she has this, you could call it divine purpose or this life purpose, and she's betraying that, and so many others are suffering because of her selfish decision. And when you don't honor who you are inside and your holistic and wholesome self, you are hurting others to appeal and appease one person. In relationships where I've been projected, a soul image has been projected onto me, the way I got out of it, the way I removed myself from the situation was I would ask myself, if I can't be who I really want to be, if I can't be myself, there's going to be so many people that aren't going to receive the wisdom or the love that I'm really able to give. They aren't going to see the world's not going to see my true potential. This video would not be happening. And and I'm going to have to break the heart of a person. I'm going to have to hurt my relationship partner. And that's going to suck. But their pain isn't going to be more than the joy that I'm going to hopefully spread my goal to millions of people. And that is the same with this story. And ask yourself these questions. This is a personal experience. You need to go within. And even if you haven't had a romantic relationship or this happened, ask if you've done this for a parent, a teacher, a guru, your boss. Have you changed your values or who you really are to appease someone else? And if you would have stuck with who you really were, how much more could you have done? And on the same level is that when you're doing this, when you're removing yourself from the values of reality, you're ruining the Tristan and Iseult ruin the opportunity for real love. Real love, as I said before, is loving someone for who they are, unconditionally, not trying to project onto them, project a soul image onto them. And what happens when you do that to someone? You lose the opportunity for that person who's out there, that soulmate, you could call them, that could be that person for you. And I know that all of us have a person out there that is like that. And our problem is that we are not trying to become wholesome individuals. And that is the main message of this book. Before you enter romantic love, focus on yourself. Don't seek. Don't be needy. Be present. Be complete. Work on yourself, and others will come. I have friends who have never been in a real relationship before, and they're like, what do I need to do? I want this dream girl or this dream woman, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, does that dream woman want you though? Are you the type of person that person would want to be with? And if not, then forget about them and become that person. Work on yourself. If you're a broke 30-year-old living at home and you have no direction, you have no personality, you have no artistic expression in the world, or no just general purpose, Who is really going to, I mean, is that perfect person going to want to be with you? And not saying that any of those things are wrong, because they're not. But if you don't have a direction and a purpose, then you're not really going to be that attractive to others. And one of the weird concepts you see in this book is that men use the image of a woman to relate to their own feminine, and that women use the image of a man to relate to their own to their masculine side. And this is a concept that Jung gets into in A Man and His Symbols. And when we could see this with Psyche and the story of Psyche and Cupid, when Psyche is stuck in darkness with Cupid, she grabs the candle and the blade, and she lights the candle, and she sees Hermes, but she's ready to kill them. And in the myth that is told, it says, is this really interesting line. It says her sex changed when she did that. I mean, at least for a moment, she changed who she was. She brought in the masculine energy. She was not whole. She was projecting onto Hermes, because Hermes gave her this whole, palace and kingdom and all this stuff. But at night, she didn't know who he was. So she was just she didn't have any force in the world. She just was letting it all. She was just a passive person who just had everything. But when she lit that lamp and was ready to kill him, she tapped into that masculine, that inner masculinity that all of us have. And if you don't like the terms masculine and feminine, she had the inner form, but didn't have the inner force. And one of the really mind-blowing things about that Robert Johnson brings up is that, and Jung, this is a big concept in Jungian psychology, is that love is an archetype, and its personality exists outside of ourselves. That it is a spiritual energy, in a sense, that has been tapped into time and time again. And that's really mind-blowing. That basically that's why it fails most of the time, because we always tap into that same energy, and we have millions of stories that are similar to this. And that's why you become possessed when you're tapping into this archetype. It's not really who you are. You're like becoming possessed. And once again, I would ask the listeners right now to reflect on love, romantic love, not real love, existing outside of yourself, and you tapping into that as a spiritual energy, if you're into the energy thing. Romance must always descend into the ego, because it is our projections and our ideals. And we could get into maybe real fast some super ego stuff and Freud and Jung, because when we're engaging in this romantic soul image concept with another person, we feel complete, right? We feel complete even for a while. And let's just say that person is very subservient. They just go along with it, and weapons that last forever. But are we really connecting to our divine self, our whole empirical self? Are we really connecting to what is actually who we really are? Or as one of Freud's concepts, are we elevating through the superego another false self? Are we creating a false self that seems whole, that seems divine and awesome and spiritual, and acting like that's the empirical or true self? And that is done through the superego, our projection and ideals. And see, all this stuff starts weaving together, and that's what's really cool about this time period with Freud, Jung, Adler, Rank, Wilhelm Reich, that even though they have different conclusions, a lot of their stuff, when you combine it all together, it turns into this really cool thing. And let's take a different angle on this. So we've been talking about romantic love, but some of you maybe are very happy in your romantic relationship and aren't doing the soul image thing, or you're currently single and not seeking a relationship. So let's talk about friendship. Most of us, I assume, have some friends or some family members, or our mom and dad. And are we projecting onto our friends? Are we projecting this soul image onto our friends? And this is something that I am currently struggling with, because I have friends from high school, from years ago, that I love dearly. But I've realized that I try to project things onto them, that I try to do things because I love them so much and I don't really want to, because I know if I looked at who they are as a person and I looked at their values and what they stand for, that I maybe wouldn't really like them. If I met this person without our past experience, that I wouldn't maybe be friends with them. And I'm only friends with them because of all our experiences from before. So what do? I project this image onto them. I'm projecting ideals onto them. Like, no, well, he wouldn't do that. No. And he's a really spiritual person. He really cares. And real friendship cannot exist when you are projecting. And I've had to do that with my friends. And what the cool thing is that our friendship hasn't dissolved. It just has changed a little bit. And I feel it's become stronger because I know what I'm getting into when I hang out with them or when I view them as my friend. I'm like, this is who they are, and I'm choosing to be their friend. It's not this false reality like, this is who they could be. That's what happens when you look at like the potential. Like, I don't have a friend named Jim, but I could say, who could Jim could really be this person. And when you're doing that potential game, that's what you start to fall into. And we could say that Tristan does that to King Mark. He isn't really looking at King Mark really needs a wife. King Mark is, depressed and there's, causing havoc in the kingdom, and he really needs a wife. If you really look at him, Tristan is actually a very attractive and it seems like a type of a guy with freaking killing dragons and stuff. I mean, it seems like he could probably find a girlfriend. And we need to become wholesome individuals even before we find real friendship. We need to feel a love for ourselves before we can find real friends and enter a real friendship. So let's get into some stuff with the sword and the harp, because that's a big issue. A theme that comes up in this book is the sword and the harp. So you need the sword to project force onto the world, to enact your will into the world. And a lot of us don't have a sword. We are passive individuals in this society. And what the sword represents is one half of the journey of becoming a wholesome individual. And what is a wholesome individual? It is someone who seeks truth and has an as accurate as a possible perception of reality. But we don't want to find truth. The one thing we don't want to do is find truth or wholeness. And our subconscious mind will do whatever it can to destroy and avoid truth. We self-sabotage so much and we avoid so much because it will turn us into that wholesome individual. And when you're a wholesome individual, you have to confront your inner demons, your addictions, the way you treated people back in when you were 13. And that's not necessarily that big of a deal. But on that journey, you're going to have to understand that was you at some point. And as you're as you're journeying on, you're going to have to put that to rest and understand why you did that. And the way to enact the will into the world is through the sword. The way to start this process is through action. And this gets back to the theory of Otto Rank that we need to enact our will into the world. We need to bring any form of art into the world to help our neurosis and to help ourselves become wholesome. However, if you only have the sword, you're missing the harp. And the harp is the emotions. The harp is knowledge and love, as the sword is mostly just action, fire, and grounded. It's earth and fire, and the harp is water and air. And in the story, we see that Tristan has a sword. He's doing all these actions, but he doesn't have the harp. He isn't connecting into his true emotions. That's how you break the love potion. You need both of that. You need the harp and the sword. And people who only use the sword become very pessimistic about love because they're just striking down relationships. They see something wrong with someone and they're just striking it down. They aren't tapping into that unconditional love pattern. And these people aren't necessarily into romantic love. And that's one of the problems in our societies, I would say it's probably a little bit better to fall into the romantic love trap and have some roller coaster of relationships than to never try it at all, than to just remain cold. Because after you fail in romance, in a romantic relationship, then you can acquire the sword. Then you can set boundaries. The sword, I'm trying to gather my thoughts on the sword. The sword is how you set boundaries. You say, no, that's enough. You can't get near me. You can't strike me down. And in a relationship, when someone's projecting that soul image onto you, I'm getting worked up about the sword. You strike them down. You say, no, that's enough. No more emotional, verbal, and hopefully not, but maybe even physical abuse. No more. But when you are even becoming pessimistic about love, when you're at a point in your life where like, no one will love me, it's time to play the harp. It's time to get the harp back and tap into your emotions and understand that if you are tapped into your emotions and you know how to set boundaries, that you are a viable and great candidate for romantic love because you are wholesome. And the sword and harp are an analogy used in this book about how to become wholesome. So that's why I'm using it. And that's why, it's a little bit rough. Let's see if there's anything else. Let's see what this other quote I marked is. Because this is a literary podcast, let's just end this with a poem. This is by Carlos Almiron. History of a love. Sorry, I'm translating from Spanish into English. Always you were the reason for my existence. To adore you for me was religion. Whoa. It is the story of a love like unto which there is no equal, which made me understand all that is good, all that is bad, that gave light to my life, extinguishing it afterwards. Oh, what a darkened life. Without your love, I will not live. And this is getting the Romeo and Juliet and the romantic love concept that it's so insane that, it's the highest joy, but it's the lowest low. When the soul image projection is going good, you are on a drug. But when it's going bad, it is the worst thing in the world. So this is my conscious book review on Understanding the Psychology of Romantic Love by Robert A. Johnson. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more book reviews, thoughts about writing, even deeper book reviews. Check out the website Conscious Writers Tribe. If you want to experience some of the most innovative and creative musings and articles on literature and creative writing, my name is Ian Cattanach, and I will see you guys on the next Conscious Book Review.